Let us fly you back to Austria to meet another amazing knife maker, Benjamin Kamon, where he shows us how he makes the Monolith.
The idea behind it is to have spent more time forging the knife and less time making handles, grinding it and all that. So to enlarge the fun part and reduce the not so fun part. My name is Benjamin Kamon. I'm a kitchen knife bladesmith based in Austria. Self-employed since about 3 years. I make carbon steel kitchen knives for the knife enthusiasts as well as hobby cooks, professional cooks, and I'm lucky to be able to sell them worldwide. The process starts with cutting a rectangular piece of my 5mm stock of 125/19. It's a pretty special steel, high carbon tungsten alloy tool steel, and the dimensions I've got are 5mm thick, and I have a certain width of 160mm. First step is we're going to cut a rectangular piece of the 5mm sheet steel of the tungsten alloy tool steel. And the length is 160mm and height will be 65mm. What we're going to do is to compress the steel, make it a little thicker to have more mass for the handle essentially. The heat up time of the forge is rather quick. Once it's fully on temperature, the metal piece heats up quite quickly also. When the steel is colder, you'll either just wait or forge a little more carefully. But other than that, it's all down to eyesight mainly. Now I'm pumping the compressed air into the forge, so it gets hotter. But if I turn it off, it's only propane. And then the overall heat will stay lower, and it's not heating up as aggressively. So then I can't really overheat it too much. The overall temperature will stay lower as well. No, usually I'm forging knife after knife with an overlap of 2 knives. So I'm putting 2 sheets in at a lower temperature, and then I'm forging one, putting it back in. For example, the tang, forge out the tang, putting it back in to heat up, and then I take the next piece, forge the tang, and so it cycles always. When I'm done with one piece, I'll get the next in, and so it's always 2 pieces in the forge. I mean, I had to get used to it because, as I said, it heats up the whole piece of steel that's in the forge, whereas the coal fire would be more controllable in the sense that you can heat up a certain piece of steel without heating up the rest of the bar or whatever you're forging at all. It took time to get used to it, but yeah, I would say for what I'm doing, it's better to forge in the gas forge than the coal forge. I mean, for detail work, if you want to heat up just the tang, then the coal forge is better because you have that localized heat. You can heat up only the tang, whereas with a gas forge, you will heat up at least a piece of the blade always with the tang. And that's not necessary, and it can, at high temperatures, can damage the steel. If you heat up steel and don't forge it, that's not particularly good for the grain structure and also for decarburization and stuff like that. So you don't necessarily want to do that. So the coal forge has its upsides as well. I'll forge the piece upright, so I can compress it from about 5mm thickness to 6 to 7mm thickness. It reduces in height, but the volume changes, or the thickness. The volume doesn't change, the thickness changes. And that step is only necessary to have a certain thickness because it makes it easier to draw the handle with, essentially. When you start the power hammer, depends on the construction of the power hammer, but the dies will hit each other once you start it. So usually you're going to have a block of wood or something like that between the two power hammer dies, the ram and the anvil. And most people just manually take it away, but I got bothered by that, so I made my little rubber bands here, and it moves away on its own. And then it's always handy, it doesn't fall on the floor, it's not gone. And then I can put it back in. With that kind of knives, I'm not as dialed in. I made, I don't know, about 20 of those. With the other kind of knives, I know my steps pretty exactly. But with those, I'm not as dialed in, so I can't really tell you exact amount of heats. It's always, they're more flowing. I don't do custom orders with them. So I essentially make them how I like them. They're just made on the fly. Those are the kind of knives that get me going, because a custom order is very specific custom order and not a lot of freedom, creative freedom. And so making knives just more enjoyable. The blade length will probably end up 280 millimeters on the edge. I mean, if we go for a Giotto, I'm not sure about that yet. Maybe it will be a Kiva. Now I have reduced the height of the rectangular piece, enlarged the thickness a little bit, and then I have to isolate the handle section with kind of a chisel tool. It's ground at a very dull angle. It just presses a slot into the material, isolates the handle, and after that I already punch a hole more or less into the middle of that. Yeah, the most exciting part is surely the handle in that case. In principle, it's not a complicated concept because it's like a bottle opener in principle. Just the details, it's forged way more open than a bottle opener, and the width is different. The steel is more resistant to forging than what you'd use for a bottle opener. And the idea behind it is to have spent more time forging the knife and less time making handles, grinding it and all that. So to enlarge the fun part and reduce the not so fun part. It was actually a concept I came up with talking to the buyers in Hungary. We were talking and talking about how little forging we do with our usual knives. One round and then we'll make the handle. You'll want to start with the complicated stuff because when you mess it up, you don't miss time forging the rest of the blade. The blade forging is easy. Not a lot of mishaps can happen there, so you want to start with the complicated part where you didn't yet invest a lot of time into the knife. So yeah, the handle is the majority of work with this one. Takes about 2 to 3 hours, I'd say, forging, and the blade is done in a few minutes, essentially. So next step is I'll isolate the section for the handle with a certain tool I made. Yeah, we'll isolate that and then punch the hole. And after that, mostly hand forging and widening the hole. Yeah, it pretty much acts like a chisel, and you can cut a slot in the rectangular piece with one side still being true to the knife overall and one side being angled. With tools like that, you always want to make sure it doesn't vibrate into the holding hand, so that section is thin intentionally because it gives the tool some flex and reduces the vibration of the power hammer in the hand. Yeah, and you usually don't weld those pieces because welds would break. You slot them in or rivet them or something like that. Always connections that are kind of loose. Next step is to punch the hole, and then we'll widen the hole up on the anvil by hand. Don't want to punch the hole too cold because the steel might overlap or get cracks or whatever, so you want to punch the hole at a relatively high heat. So that's why I'm taking it slowly and being carefully with it. No need to stress that part, it's quite essential and you don't want to rush that part. It doesn't pay off. The upside of punching a hole instead of just drilling it, which would be possible too, is that you don't lose any or not a lot of material. When you're punching a hole and drifting it open, all that material goes to the side, essentially into what will later be the handle. That's the positive versus drilling it. Whereas drilling could be faster depending on how you do it. Punching just has some advantages over drilling a hole. Yeah, it's waste and you need the steel, the volume, later for the handle. You want to have as much volume as you can of steel in the handle. So last time, hopefully. That's the hole punched. So the next part after punching the hole is to go to the anvil horn and forge the material upright with the horn inside the hole. And what that will do is it will draw the material lengthwise and a little to the side also at that point, but mostly lengthwise. It will enlarge the hole. Yeah, then I can put the knife more onto the horn, have more space to forge it, can use a little higher force. So that's the hole punched. And yeah, now going to forge the handle on the anvil horn. Here's the piece, the little coin of steel that came out of the punched hole. With the first Monolith knives I made, I just throw it into trash. But then I thought the customer would actually find it interesting to have that little piece with him as a little coin with the production date and steel grade and hardness and stuff like that. And as a reminder that this little piece of steel made up for the hole in the handle, actually. Forging, for one, you have to understand the mechanics behind it, how the steel moves. You have to understand the volume, but also it's quite interesting. You can simulate that with Play-Doh, actually, but it's interesting with Play-Doh. You can use your hands and you can touch the stuff. With forging, it's more complicated. You don't have a lot of time. You have to hold it with tools, so you have to use tongs. and you can only manipulate it with a flat surface. That is your anvil and your hammer. So that makes forging so interesting, because you have a lot of limitations that you have to overcome with, essentially technique and thought you put into it in advance, to compensate for the complications of only being able to use tools. By forging this section upright on the horn, it compresses the steel into width and length. So the hole that was originally that diameter will grow in size, and the width of the material will increase, and we'll slowly start to shape a handle from that. I'd say forge as low of a temperature as possible and as high as necessary. That's usually a good rule, in that it can damage the steel to forge too hot. So it will move easier, but if the steel isn't any good afterwards, then you miss the mark. Yeah, usually that's used to cut hot steel. I'm just using it to adjust the position of the handle with the edge.
If you're a knife maker, you should definitely check out knifematerial.at. Knifematerial.at keeps a great range of tools, consumables and equipment for all your knife making needs. Their website is mobile friendly and even have a one-click payment option such as Apple Pay. They stock the Apex Ultra Steel in 5mm and 15mm thick billet. Protect that steel from decarb and scaling with ScaleX protective coating. They keep stock of the Knife Vice Pro, which would be great if you're shaping, grinding and finishing knife handles. G10 liners to give some pop on your knife handles. They come in a variety of colors and sizes. Keep your knives safe and stored properly with their high quality knife case. Thank you knifematerial.at for sponsoring this video. Extra thank you as well to Clark Knives, who make and sell ready to grind Damascus billets and offer professional heat treatment services. Thank you as well to Multi-Tool Products Europe, who supply the 84 engineering belt grinders and the Even Heat kilns for knife making. Part 2 will be here when it's ready. In the meantime, check out another knife making video over here. Thanks for watching, and we look forward to seeing you in the next one.